Welcome to Monday Night Quarterback right here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. That's a way that you say roll tide as you hang out with us tonight like you do every Monday night. We break down Alabama's games. We talk recruiting. We do it all right here on Monday Night Quarterback, and it's part of the On3 network. We want you to be part of the On3 network as well. We made the big switch. We joined On3. It was a really great move for us. Now we have this huge network of the best to help us get ready for every game and recruiting and all of that stuff. So to invite you right now, $1 get you 12 months. That's $1 for a full year subscription to be part of Bama Insider On3. $1, 12-month. Find out more at BamaInsider.com. Before we talk to Clint Lamb, let me remind you again that our show is brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums every Monday night, and that's also where we're at after the games on Saturday at Westgate Luxury Condominiums. It's right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. They're beautiful. They're fantastic. They got the oversized balconies. You got the amazing kitchens, 1 to 5 bedroom units that are available. Parking's awesome. The Skygate Clubs where we hang out on the roof. They have a big tailgate there every game day. So check it out for yourself at westgateal.com. All right, here he is, Clint Lamb. We saw you. You actually rolled over to the Westgate after the game on Saturday. Always good to see you. How you doing, my friend?
Mick, I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing today?
Look, I'm pumped up, man. This is a big week, Clint. You know, it's not Utah State. This is going on the road to Texas in Austin for the first time in about 100 years. And you got Alabama, number 1 in the country, taking on this upstart Texas team that could be really dangerous. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. And really, if you're an Alabama fan, you better get really pumped for this game because it's the only one in the month of September that's going to be that we think is going to be fun because they got UL Monroe after this, and then they got Vanderbilt, and then you start getting into the thick of things, and the schedule really starts to pick up from there. But for right now, it's Texas, and that's pretty much it. And the storylines, with Steve Sarkisian, and granted, I'm sure we'll hear a lot about Jaleel Billingsley this week and Agiye Hall, even though there's suspensions going on, and we're probably not going to see either player. But you got Keelan Robinson, you had Ben Davis last year. Just a lot of connections between the two programs because of that Steve Sarkisian, link. And it's going to be a fun game, even though I do think that right now Texas is still a year or two away, at least. I'd probably say a couple of years away from really being in the conversation. And this, if this would have happened in 2024, I guess, I really think that this would have been a much more exciting game. But at the same time, the timing of the game, and when it's going to happen in the morning, and the fact that it's in Austin, Texas, that fan base is going to be pretty riled up. So it's going to be a tough environment.
Guys, we love you in the comments section. So many of you guys that make this job a lot of fun. Hit us with those comments. And, we got a new system here, and I'm trying to watch Clint and, watch you guys as well. So I'm going to pay close attention to your comments tonight, and we really appreciate you being part of our show. So hit us up in the comments section as we talk Alabama and Texas. But before we get to Alabama and Texas, let's get into the 55-0 win over Utah State. What did you think of Alabama's pass rush and their big 3 D-line rotation?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting how they used those guys because, all throughout the offseason, we had heard great things about Chris Braswell dating back to the spring. And Nick Saban had declared that he kind of viewed him as a third starter at outside linebacker. And even though I knew he was going to see much more heavy usage throughout this year, I didn't really think that it would come in the way that it did against Utah State. And maybe that was just specifically against the Aggies. We'll kind of have to wait and see. I think Texas this weekend will probably be a better gauge of exactly how Will Anderson and Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell are all going to be used, because I want to say Chris Braswell came in for Will Anderson on the 3rd drive of the game, if I'm not mistaken. And, first of all, I didn't think Will Anderson would be the guy that you took off the field in that instance. He played over a 90% snap share last year. He was very effective doing that. Didn't seem to bother him at all. And he's the best defensive player in college football. So I thought they would just continue on, that route. It could have something to do with the fact that he's draft eligible after this year. Maybe they're trying to preserve him, or keep him protected. I don't really think that's the case, but it is something to monitor. I thought Chris Braswell played extremely well. I mean, he got the most usage that he has in his entire career since getting to Alabama. And this is now, he's going into year 3, or he's currently in year 3. And I think he performed, extremely well. Alabama's defense didn't generate a lot of sacks or really any sacks, but they were disruptive. And I think that had a lot more to do with Utah State's game plan. They claimed that they felt like they could win some matchups out there on the perimeter. And they did on the very first snap of the game against Tyrion Arnold, right? I think it was like a 23-yard gain. But then from that point forward, I think they respected Alabama's pass rush too much. And so instead of, trying to test Alabama deep, they kind of had to settle for more of a quick passing attack and get the football out of the quarterback's hands. That prevented Alabama from racking up a lot of statistics. But I think that's, something that a lot of opposing offenses are going to have to do against that Alabama defense this year, because you might think that they're exploitable out there on the perimeter. And to some degree, I think with some unknowns, and they're still working some things out, they got competition going, that's true. You might not have time to be able to get those guys vertical and really test them deep. So, I think it's a good combination for Alabama. The fact that they're working on that aspect, they've got a dominant pass rush that can kind of mask it and, provide some help as they're learning and getting more experience. But this outside linebacker group with Dallas Turner, Will Anderson, and Chris Braswell is going to be a huge problem for the entire year.
Guys, as you hang out with Clint Lamb and I on Monday Night Quarterback, know that Joseph Hastings and Jimmy Stein are coming up as well. We're going to talk recruiting. We're going to talk Alabama and Texas. We're recapping Alabama and Utah State and getting Clint's opinions on the game from Saturday. But like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. We appreciate you being here. Hit the bell so that you know every time that we're on live. And know that we want you to share it. Tell your friends about it. We're trying to climb to 100,000 subscribers. You guys have made this the best channel in college sports, and we appreciate you. And we want to keep it rolling. And talking about rolling, great stuff in the comment section tonight. All right, Clint, you talked about the defensive line. What about the offensive line? There was kind of like a late injury. We saw one guy out, another guy in. It didn't seem like Bryce Young was under a whole lot of pressure. I mean, there were a few times where there were guys in the backfield and then he'd make a miss. He ran a lot. Maybe that was because of pressure. Your thoughts on the offensive line?
Well, I think, first of all, you have to note a couple of things. They didn't start with the group that they're typically going to start with, because Emil Ekiyor Jr. had missed 5 days of practice due to some sort of illness. And so what Alabama did was they kicked Kendall Randolph from left guard to right guard, and then they inserted Javian Cohen, who's still in that competition at left guard. They slid him in there. And, I think Randolph is a lot more comfortable on the left side than he is the right. And I think that, Emil Ekiyor Jr., he's expected to be one of Alabama's best offensive linemen. He's been a multi-year starter. And, so a lot of people were concerned going in because they felt like, okay, Emil Ekiyor Jr. is not running with the first team offense during warmups, but he's running with the second team. So that doesn't point towards an injury. That points more towards a suspension or something like that. And it didn't have anything. He wasn't in trouble. There wasn't any sort of problem. It's just Nick Saban and the coaching staff felt like they were going to reward the guy who had practiced the most at that spot throughout the entire week. And that's kind of how they've always operated. If you don't practice, you don't play. But the fact that Ekiyor did get at least a couple of practices in, that allowed him to actually, get some live game reps, which I thought was important. But he didn't start. And so I don't think that was that big of a deal. I do think that it's notable that once he did come into the game and they moved Kendall Randolph back to left guard, the very first snap, Bryce Young was given quite a bit of time to throw the football. And then on the very next snap, they created, I thought it was one of their best pushes from that offensive line on the evening and created some movement in the run game. And, so when you look at the group, I thought it did perform well. When you look at Utah State's defensive front, they like to do a lot of twists and stunts and create confusion. And you really never know where the pressure is coming from. And I think Alabama handled it for the most part pretty well. But it is a difficult, scheme, as far as recognition is concerned. So you saw some up and down play. I don't think that they created nearly as much movement consistently in the run game as they wanted to. And I also think that with the way that Bill O'Brien called the game, it wasn't enough, run formations, give your offense the best opportunity to create consistent movement running the football. It was a lot of 5 wide, empty backfield, throwing the football around. And I think that they got to get better balance on that front. But overall, I thought it was a good performance. And for it actually being the first game of the season, I thought it was pretty encouraging. I thought that J.C. Latham played great. I thought Stein played great. And, of course, Darian Dalcourt did too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. How about Bryce Young and the wide receivers? We were all really excited to see who looked great. And honestly, I felt like there were more than just one guy that stood out. How about you?
100%. Yeah. I thought Bryce Young was, the fact that he added that rushing element, whether, that might not be something that he does every week, but just putting that on tape, it's going to make or force defenses to respect that ability, or it can now be a part of his, arsenal. And if he can throw that at you as well, he's going to become that much more difficult to defend. And especially if the offensive line's improving, or maybe he's not under as much duress as he was last year. On top of having that, I think it's going to make it extremely tough. One thing about Bryce, you kind of saw the growth happening live, because early in the game, I think it was the first drive when they had to settle for that field goal. On third down, they brought a corner blitz. He didn't see it, didn't recognize it, and they were able to force, pressure, and he had to throw the football, and it was an incomplete pass, and then they kicked a field goal. Later on in the game, they tried to bring a corner blitz. This time he saw it coming. He recognized it. He found his hot read, and he was able to get the football out and create a big play. That was just him learning on the fly, and that's what you're going to get from Bryce Young. He's a very effective player, and I think that, there's good things coming for him and for Alabama's offense. I thought the receivers all did a great job too.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, Kobe Prentice, to me, I was thoroughly impressed by just this guy, a true freshman, looked the part out there and got an opportunity because of an injury.
He didn't look like a true freshman for sure. He looked like a guy who was going into year 3, year 4. And, I've been telling people since the game that I think it's important to note when you play a game like this, it really allows you to kind of try some things out, get a lot of people involved, a lot of players played. But early in the game, one of the first go-to players in the offense, one of the featured players in the offense was, Kobe Prentice. And that's something that going in, I'd asked and wondered about was, would he be more of a featured piece or would he be more of a complimentary piece? It looks like he's going to be featured, and he handled it extremely well. He caught targets. He seemed to have a good chemistry with Bryce Young, and he did things after the catch. Very exciting player. And then when you look at Jermaine Burton and the fact that him and Bryce still working on that vertical stuff, they had one incompletion that I think, was very close to, another explosive play. But I think Burton and him also were, on the same page, him and Trayshawn Holden. They've got options. I didn't think Ja'Cory Brooks played his best game, but I certainly think he's going to be able to bounce back from him. So their top 4 receivers, that was a big question mark going in. I think they're in pretty good shape.
Guys, as you hang out with us here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel, Monday Night Quarterback, as always, give us a thumbs up, like and subscribe, share, be part of our channel, and also hit the bell just so you know that when we're going live, you'll get a notification. This is part of BamaInsider.com, and we want you to join us now that we're part of the On3 network. It's really easy to do. $1 get you 12 months. Just go to BamaInsider.com, and you can sign up today. And that would include joining Jimmy Stein and Clint Lamb on the message boards, following recruiting with Andrew Bone and our next guest, Joseph Hastings. So, and Kyle Henderson on all of it. So do that. And we want you to be a part of what we're doing here as we talk about Alabama and Texas now, changing gears to this Saturday's game. It's an early one, bright and early, high noon in Texas, right? A showdown. That's the way it's supposed to be in the Lone Star State. Biggest matchup between Alabama and Texas, Clint Lamb.
Yeah, I would probably say it would be that Texas offensive line versus Alabama's defensive line. And the reason that I say that is I feel like that it's going to be very important for Texas to establish the run game for 2 reasons. Number one, I think that, the more you can establish the run game, the more clock you're going to be able to chew. That's going to be able to keep Alabama's offense off the field. And that's something that you're worried about. On top of that, you also want to establish the run game so you can take as much pressure off of Quinn Ewers as you possibly can. So whether it be those edge rushers or really the interior defensive line, I think it's very possible you see a lot more of Jaheim Otis this week. Last week he had a couple of splash plays, but I don't think he had this wow performance that a lot of people were expecting. I think against Utah State's offense, it didn't really lend itself to, put his skill set on full display. I feel like against a team like Texas and what they're going to be trying to do, which is establish the run game, I think a guy like Otis can have a huge impact. So look out for that. But yeah, I think that with Texas's offensive line, you've got 2 true freshmen, which is, very talented freshmen, and they're going to be very good. Like I said, when I talk about this Texas team being a year or two away, I'm mostly talking about the offensive line because they were able to recruit that position extremely well, and they've got some talent. They got a couple of freshmen starting. They got a couple of sophomores starting. And, that doesn't lend itself well when you're lining up across from, a Will Anderson or a Chris Braswell or Dallas Turner or, all these veteran interior defensive linemen that Alabama has. And so I think that it can get really ugly for Texas pretty quick if they're not able to establish a run game and they're not able to handle that defensive front for Alabama with that young offensive front. So to me, that's the key of this game. If Texas can, then I think they can have some success offensively. I don't think they're going to stop Alabama's offense too much. But if they're not able to, and Alabama's able to control the line of scrimmage, which I fully expect, I think it could get pretty ugly.
Joseph Hastings is coming up next. One more question for you, Clint. And I'm just curious, 11 a.m. kickoff, how do you think that this will affect Alabama?
I think it's one of the biggest advantages that Texas has going in because, if you look, Alabama normally plays this type of kickoff game against subpar opponents. And if you look, how many times does Alabama come out for an 11 a.m. kickoff, being super early, and they've come out flat? Now, granted, like I said, a lot of that could have to do with the fact that it's a subpar opponent, and, that tends to happen. But I just think that this is, Texas is used to this start time, and you're already dealing with that Texas heat. But on top of that, they understand, hey, we wake up really early. We go ahead and get our team breakfast out of the way. We do what we got to do as far as our meetings. We are ready to rock by 11 a.m. pretty much every week, it feels like. And so I think that does lend a little bit of an advantage for Texas. I don't know if it's enough to, create a significant difference in the game, but I do think it's something to monitor. And I'll be, I was encouraged by Alabama getting out there and starting fast, pretty fast against Utah State. We've seen them come out flat, in years past. So for this team and its leadership and, keeping guys focused, I thought that was an encouraging sign. I'll be looking to see how they do with that 11 a.m. kickoff now.
All right, Clint. Well, it's great talking to you. Always awesome hanging out. What are you working on this week, and how can people follow you?
Talk Champions message boards, as always. Love hanging out over there on those message boards. We have a great time, great conversation. Going to be releasing some video and article as far as 5 players to watch against Texas, 5 Alabama players to watch. Going to have, quite a few breakdowns. Going to have more staff predictions later on in the week, injury reports, all sorts of stuff coming. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And as always, Mick, I had a great time joining you, and I'm looking forward to doing it soon.
Yeah, it was great having you in person on Saturday, and we'll do it again real soon and talk some Alabama football. There's Clint Lamb, and that's at Clint R. Lamb on Twitter. He's a great Twitter follow, by the way, guys. He makes me laugh a lot with some of the different stuff he puts up there. So keep up the good work, my friend, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Absolutely, Mick. Good talking to you, man.
Appreciate it. Hey, guys, as we bring on our recruiting expert, I got to tell you something. Like and subscribe. I'm going to tease you a little bit because you want to know about all of this Texas, Alabama recruiting stuff. And as I bring Joseph on, he's the man. He's going to tell you everything about it. But you need to join us at BamaInsider.com. Now that we're part of On3, you get a membership. $1 gets you an entire year. You cannot beat that $1 an entire year of Bama Insider on 3. So he's a guy on the move constantly, all over the place, covering the hottest prospects in college sports. We got him here on Monday Night Quarterback. Joseph Hastings, what's up, dude?
Mick, I'm doing excellent. So excited about this upcoming week, my travels, and just the rest of the season, honestly, because look, Alabama, despite having 21 commits, continues to be after some top prospects, and it's always interesting to see what they'll bring to the table. And, I got to see Keon Keeley last week, getting ready for a big Texas trip this coming week. So I'm very, very excited about that.
Yeah, Keon Keeley. So, yeah, recap last week's recruiting for you. I mean, I know you're all over the place.
Yeah, so I was in Tampa, Florida last week to see Keon Keeley. A little bit of a weird situation there because lightning delay and rain delay ended up pushing his game back to 9:30 Eastern from previously scheduled time of 7. But Keon Keeley was absolutely dominant in that game from what I was able to see. He had a sack on the 3rd play of the game. Actually started off inside, hands in the dirt inside, and then bounced outside for that sack. Ended up finishing with 4 total sacks by my count. Just has long arms. He's 6'6", 7-foot wingspan. He looks like a basketball player out there on the football field, but he doesn't move awkwardly at all. Moves very well, is very fluid, has great hip flexibility. Just an overall great prospect. I didn't really get to see him play in pass coverage. That was the one aspect I wanted to see him in, but there just wasn't enough opportunities there. But he's somebody you can tell really studies the film room, anticipates the snap count pretty well. Jumped early a couple of times, but for the most part was anticipating the snap count well. And just very powerful too to go along with that height. Can obviously see why he's the number one edge prospect across the board, number 3 overall in On3's class of 2023 rankings. I came away highly impressed by what I saw from Keon Keeley on Friday.
Nice. Well, Alabama and Texas, they've been in these recruiting battles, right? Bama's won a lot of them, but Texas, they got the Manning, right? They got Arch Manning, and then that kind of changed a lot of the momentum in recruiting. Once he committed to Texas, all of a sudden they started getting a lot of big-time prospects because guys want to play with him. Going into this game on Saturday, Alabama and Texas, give me some of the Alabama-Texas battles to keep an eye on, and then maybe who's going to be in Texas for Alabama, guys that maybe they already have in their column.
So the priority target right now that to pay attention to is Jalen Hale. He's a big-time wide receiver out of Texas, Longview, Texas. He's going to be announcing his commitment on September 21st, but is going to be officially visiting Texas this upcoming weekend. Took an official visit to Alabama this past weekend and has an official visit to Texas A&M set up for September 17th to the 19th. That's a really interesting one to pay attention to just because of all these visits lining up right before his commitment date. Alabama made a very, very strong push over the weekend. Nick Saban participated in the recruiting pitch, played a big role in Alabama's pitch to him over the weekend, which is, look, come in, help us with wide receiver depth. You've seen the development that we've had at your position in recent years, or just ever since Nick Saban arrived. Amari Cooper, Julio Jones, Jerry Jeudy, Jameson Williams. The list goes on and on. That was kind of Saban's pitch to Hale. And from what I was told, he was really receptive of what Alabama was trying to sell him on that front. And he also got to see Kobe Prentice, a true freshman, start, have 5 receptions for 60 yards. Isaiah Bond, another true freshman, have 2 receptions for 23 yards. And you just got to see how Alabama was able to utilize some of those younger guys, and that really appealed to Hale. So he's the priority, the main one to pay attention to in terms of Texas-Alabama battles. You also have Malik Muhammah, who's currently committed to the Longhorns, but he told me recently that Alabama is going to receive an official visit from him. Travaris Robinson, cornerbacks coach there for Alabama, is in touch with his dad and also Malik multiple times a week. Malik Muhammah is going to be taking an official visit, likely for the Texas A&M game. I'm going to be seeing him this week, hopefully. And he's just another one to pay attention to, even though he is committed to Texas right now. Had Bama in his top 3 before committing to the Longhorns in July. So those are the 2 main ones to pay attention to. There's obviously some battles in 2024, but 2023 is kind of where it's at. Obviously that's where fans are paying attention to. So Hale and Muhammad both are going to be in attendance for this upcoming weekend's game.
Guys, thanks for hanging out with us here on Monday Night Quarterback, brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums. Again, like and subscribe, hit the thumbs up, share as we talk Alabama football like we do every Monday. Alabama 1-0 after a 55-0 drumming of Utah State. They'll take on Texas, 11 a.m. coming up on Saturday. All right, Joseph, let's get into the next guy, maybe the next couple of guys that could commit to Alabama. Is there anyone on the forefront?
I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to go right back to Hale. I mean, he's committing September 21st, 16 days. So he's obviously one to pay attention to. We've talked about Jordan Renaud before. He's someone I'm hoping to see on Friday as well. He's going to be taking on Jalen Hale's team, actually, Tyler Legacy versus Longview. So excited for that matchup. Renaud's going to be committing on September 19th, but has an official visit scheduled to Oklahoma for this upcoming weekend. So, Alabama and Oklahoma are the top 2 schools right now. I still have my prediction in for the Crimson Tide, but you never kind of know with these last-minute official visits how things may change. Even with Jalen Hale, even though I've heard that Texas A&M is a distant third, you can't rule them out, especially if they're getting an official visit. Even though I do think it's going to be between Alabama and Texas, but you look at Renaud here, that official visit to Oklahoma, some in Norman feel that there's a chance that they'll land him. I still feel confident in my Alabama prediction, but those two are committing within the span of 3 days. And how huge would that be for Alabama? I know Renaud is, he's from South Florida, so people are going to say, he's a Florida native, can't count it, but landing two of the top 3 players in Texas would be massive. And one quick note on Renaud, actually, he attends the same school that true freshman running back for Alabama, Jamarian Miller, attended. So, there's that connection there between those two. As for others, Santarian Perkins, he's obviously one that we continue to pay attention to. We've talked about him countless times, the Ole Miss linebacker commit. Keon Keeley, you just never know. After 2 visits to Florida and Ohio State, maybe, you'd never know. I think it's more likely that he waits until after he takes that official visit to Alabama, the October 8th weekend against Texas A&M. But you just never know with recruiting. Things can change from day to day. But Perkins, Renaud, and Hale, those are kind of the 3 we're really monitoring right now.
All right, last question for you this week, Joseph. Where are you going to be on the road?
All right, so I'm flying out to Dallas on Thursday, hoping to see Malik Muhammah. I'm pretty sure I will, but just like LSU with point after attempts, you can't ever say anything's a guarantee nowadays. With what happened last night, but yeah, so I'm hoping to see Malik Muhammah, maybe Colin Simmons. He's a big time 2024 edge out of Duncanville. And then on Friday, I'm gonna be going to that Tyler versus Longview game. Jordan Renaud on one side for Tyler. And then Jalen Hale on the other side for Longview. So really excited to see these 2 uncommitted targets, both of whom are committing this month. I was looking at my schedule, and initially I was trying to go to Tennessee, Mississippi, and Louisiana this week to see Ty Lockwood and Justin Jefferson and Eli Holstein, the 3 commits for Alabama. I ended up scratching that because, look, at the end of the day, people want to hear from these uncommitted targets. Renaud and Hale aren't talking on the phone right now from our attempts to reach out to them. So, that's kind of where that factored into. But, I'll be able to get some video of them, talk with each of them, hopefully. And very excited to bring all of you all that content to BamaInsider.com.
Awesome, man. Sounds like a really good week. Well, follow at Joseph A. Hastings on Twitter. He's always updating Alabama and really a lot of different schools. I mean, you cover everyone over there for On 3, but I mean, a laser focus on Alabama. You got some great stuff. Anything else that you got going on besides this big trip to the Lone Star State?
Nothing much. I just want to answer Corey Lewis's question too before I forget. Do I think that one of the Alabama quarterbacks will decommit? Personally, no. Both are fine being in the 2 quarterback class, Eli Holstein and Dylan Lonergan. They know that competition is going to exist anywhere that they go. And they're perfectly fine with that. They both seem very locked in with the Crimson Tide. I spoke with Lonergan last month. He's locked in. I'm hoping to catch up with Holstein soon, but he seems pretty firm in his commitment as well. So once again, you just never know with recruiting how things will play out, but right now, both of them are set 100% in with Alabama. Should be visiting multiple times this season. As for anything else I've got going on, should we look ahead? Next week, I'm going to be seeing Cormani McClain and Damon Wilson, two other top targets for Alabama in the state of Florida. Really excited about those games, and we're just going to continue to roll features out. Andrew Bone and I on BamaInsider.com. We do our weekly roundtable on Wednesdays where you get to submit questions to us, and we'll answer them. We're going to answer every single one of your questions. So be sure to join Bama Insider and take advantage of that. And thank you for the love. Always believe in Alabama. Always appreciate it. And thank you all for the support.
Yeah, great job. Great job. Even going over to the comment section and grabbing one and throwing it out there and giving us an A+ answer on that one. All right, again, Joseph A. Hastings, you can follow him on Twitter, or like he said, go to BamaInsider.com. You're going to want to be part of that roundtable with he and Bone that's only available, and you can get access $1 for 12 months. I mean, come on, that's 4 quarters. 4 quarters. And I'm not even talking about a football game. I'm talking about 4 real quarters. Get you an entire year of Bama Insider on 3. Thanks, Joseph. Great job.
Thank you, Mick. Take care now.
You too. We'll talk to you again really soon. All right, guys. Again, like and subscribe. Hit the bell. Thumbs up as you hang out with us here. That's a way of saying Roll Tide. Comment section. You guys are killing it tonight. And let's bring on our last guest, Jimmy Stein. Look at you back there. I'm throw you up on the screen. You look good. Yeah, see, you got some Bama pictures behind you. You're ready to talk some football. Roll Tide, my friend. How you doing?
Doing fine. Thanks for throwing me up on the screen. Didn't even hurt.
No, you're all right with that. So you recovered quickly from your being thrown onto the screen today, and I get to ask you some questions. You know, you and I, as I refer to a lot, are OGs. You know, we've been around for a long time, and we've seen a lot. We actually remember when Alabama wasn't good. You remember when Alabama was really good, then not so good, and then really good again. You know, so. Love that perspective. And that's why this first question, I guess it's kind of really something that I just wanted to know. I was curious, but what do you think the historical significance of Alabama and Texas playing is?
Well, Coach Bryant didn't have a lot of luck with Texas. There was a lot of losing to Texas. I think that Coach Saban win over Texas in the national championship game in 2009 might have been the first one. That's hard to believe, you know, in retrospect. There's been so much winning going on here since 2008, but Texas was sort of a kryptonite to Coach Bryant, a little bit like Notre Dame was. Wasn't a lot of Alabama-Texas matchups. It wasn't like it was an annual thing. I know myself. I mean, I'm going to be in Austin. That's going to be my first trip there, which shows how little Alabama has played Texas over the years. You know, it's funny, though, Mick, when I think of the historical significance of this game, I actually don't think back. I think forward, because just 2 seasons from now, most likely, I'm predicting it's going to happen in 24 and not 25. Just in 2 seasons, Alabama and Texas are going to be in the same conference. That's a whopping historically significant event.
Right.
This is a non-conference game. Next season, there will be a return trip to Tuscaloosa. Texas will play in Tuscaloosa. That will be a non-conference game. And it could be that Alabama and Texas play in 2024 for a 3rd year in a row, and that will be a conference game. That is just a really unusual situation. Obviously, Texas is historically really good. It's shocking that since 2009, I saw today, let's give credit to Chris Felica from ESPN, that came up with the stat that since that 2009 game when Alabama beat Texas, Alabama's won 5 national championships. Alabama has won more games by 24 points than Texas has won at all since 2009. Texas only has 1 more win than Northwestern since 2009.
Wow.
So fans of college football that have only really been fans of college football during the Nick Saban era, it must be really confusing to them to hear of a time that Texas would always beat Alabama, and that Alabama had never beaten Texas, and that Alabama wasn't always like this, and that Texas wasn't always average. But we'll see. I do think Sark is an interesting hire, and I'm anxious to see what he'll do there. It's only year 2. But Texas has a lot of advantages between money into the program, historical fan. They have a massive, energized, passionate fan base, much like Alabama. But money and prospects, Texas, as we know, produces as many prospects as anybody in the country. Texas, California, Florida. Texas should be better than they've been, and history says so.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that's a good point. I mean, going into that championship game in 2009, one of the narratives was Alabama had never beaten Texas, you know, and he threw the scores up there. How about the fact that this is the first time that Alabama has played in Austin against Texas in just about 100 years?
Whoa. It's amazing. I don't remember that one from 100 years ago. You thought I'd have been there.
Like that's like Wallace Wade time, you know, like Wallace Wade and Frank Thomas. I mean, you're going way back. You know, you would have figured that these 2 teams would have had a home and home somewhere along the way. And you look at that. That's from the national championship game. Those uniforms just look like they need to play each other.
I agree, and it is really hard to believe, Mick, because these are 2 programs who have been historically great for most of those 100 years. And it's not like Austin is in California. It's not that far away.
Mm-mm.
They're both sort of in the same region, soon to be in the same conference. It's one of those things that's hard to believe. And then throw in the fact, Mick, that, in the 70s, 80s, the 60s, these teams only played 6, 7 at the most conference games all year long. There were many more opportunities to play non-conference opponents back then. But even back then, most teams tried to load up their non-conference schedules with games they could win so they could make a bowl and make some money. So it is bizarre that I think it's off the top of my head 9 times I believe Texas and Alabama have played ever. And this is, again, off the top of my head, but I believe it's 7 wins for Texas, 1 win for Alabama, and a tie somewhere in there. And I'm happy to see Alabama playing Texas, and I'm excited about adding Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC in approximately 2024 going forward.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun, and I love that picture of Trent Richardson busting that run. I was at the Rose Bowl that day. It was really amazing.
Oh, yeah, I was there. He was a freshman.
Yep, he was a freshman, and it just felt like it was an historic feel. Going into that stadium, the fight song, "Hey, remember the Rose Bowl? We'll win then," and then you beat Texas. And Texas hasn't been the same, Jimmy, since they lost that football game, and neither is Alabama. Look, Alabama went into that game, and they weren't a team that people thought was going to just go in there and beat up on Texas. And I know Colt McCoy got injured early. I think Alabama still would have won that football game, Colt McCoy or not. That Alabama team was a team of destiny, and they've just continued to roll since. And Texas is trying to get off the mat still.
Yeah, and I've been to all of them, all these Saban national championships, and some say it's the nostalgia of the first one, or the first one Alabama had won since 1992. But I just know myself personally, it's still my favorite national championship game of all the Saban national championships, in part because it's the first of Saban's championships at Alabama, in part because it was Texas that Alabama defeated on such a big stage. But really, it was the game in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, adding it all up, hadn't won a national championship since 1992. You're playing Texas. It's in the Rose Bowl, which is so historically significant to Alabama, but in years past. So much history that night, and that's one I'll never forget. It remains my personal favorite trip and my personal favorite national championship game of the Saban national championships.
Guys, like and subscribe as you hang out with us here on Monday Night Quarterback, hanging with Jimmy Stein. Show's brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums here in Tuscaloosa, right next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. Find out more information at westgateal.com. All right, Jimmy, let's go back to modern times. Let's go to the game on Saturday, right? Bryce Young did it with his arm, but he also did it with his legs. I remember last year hoping that he didn't run a lot because I didn't want to see him get hurt, because I didn't really feel like there was anyone that could take his spot, last year. Maybe things are different now because Jalen Milroe, I think, could jump in, and so could Ty Simpson. Not saying I want that to happen. I'm just saying, like, when I see him running like that, did you have that feeling at all when he was, busting it on the ground for 100 yards?
Well, it's something I talked about a lot this spring and summer, that I wanted to see Bryce run more. I sort of felt like this was an arrow in our quiver that we just never fired a year ago. With all of Bryce's success last year and with his athleticism, Alabama did not call a designed QB run the entire season. There was not one quarterback draw, not one quarterback sweep. And this is a kid that runs a 4.5 40. I'm not talking about a self-reported 4.5 40, or that's a guess on my part. This spring, underclassmen run the 40 for the NFL scouts, and Bryce Young ran a 4.50. That is legitimately flying. And so Bryce has this ability. He's also elusive. We saw that Saturday. He'll make people miss in the open field. He's got moves. I mean, this can be a real weapon for Alabama. It just wasn't deployed a year ago, in part because of, your stated reasons, Mick. It was a little scary to think what it would be like without Bryce. It was like protecting Bryce, keeping Bryce healthy was priority number one. Not to say that priority has been diminished in any way, but there is increased confidence in Jalen Milroe. Ty Simpson's here, even for a true freshman. I think there would be some confidence in Ty Simpson if he were to play. So I think confidence in the backups is one thing, but I think trusting Bryce is a bigger factor. And by that, we saw Saturday, Bryce runs around and he does it smartly. He didn't take any big shots. He wasn't hit in a way that made you worry he wouldn't get up. I think it's a matter of, Bryce, trust yourself to advance the ball with your legs, make a big play with your legs, but at the same time, be smart. We don't want to see you take a big hit. We don't want to see anything unnecessary. But also think of this, Mick. Bryce was sacked 42 times last season. And when a quarterback is in the pocket and gets hit, or gets hit behind the line of scrimmage when he's not moving, or maybe he gets hit from his blind side, is there really a bigger chance of injury down the field being tackled than there is in the pocket? If we just tell him, hey, you just sit back there behind the line of scrimmage no matter what, we don't want to see you run. Well, that got him sacked 42 times last year. So I'm just saying, I don't think Bryce using his legs, advancing the ball down the field, actually creates any more chance of injury than him just sitting back there, because we saw him get hit quite a bit a year ago. Biggest hit he took all night Saturday wasn't on one of those runs. It was the first time he got hit all night on a corner blitz, a nickel corner blitz that Bryce didn't pick up pre-snap. So an unblocked player came in and hit him hard. So I don't really think it's it's a concern that Bryce running the ball down the field is very likely to get him hurt. He just has to be smart. And is there any player more trustworthy out there than Bryce Young? I don't think so.
No. And you bring up a great point. Also, it's a new element to his game, because last year he would look like he was going to run, right? And then he would pull up and throw it. Well, now all of a sudden you got to think maybe the guy's going to take off. And if he does, he could end up in the end zone. How could a guy that won the Heisman look better than he did the year he won the Heisman, right? But there's just something different about him, at least through one game. And it's just, it's a confidence thing, maybe. Did you see it too? I don't even know how you say that. The guy won the Heisman last year. He just seems like he's got this different it factor this year.
What I saw myself was, I've seen Bryce throw the ball a little better. I don't think that was Bryce's all-time night in terms of accuracy, in terms of throwing the football. I've seen him throw it a little better, and he threw it Saturday night. The numbers were fine. But what I saw of Bryce was better command. I think he had complete control of the offense. I think there was a confidence and swagger to him mentally, not just the physical part, but just in the pre-snap reads. I just talked about how he sort of blew one. Well, when you play 60 snaps, you're not going to go 60 for 60. The other team is literally on every single snap trying to fool you and show you something and do something else. They're going to slip a couple things past him. But I saw better command. I saw a really confident kid. And I think the use of his legs, again, no designed quarterback runs. Those were not draws. Those were not sweeps. That was the protection breaking down and Bryce being more confident in, hey, I'm going to make something happen with my legs. And he really did 100 yards. And boy, can you imagine if he's not going to rush for 100 yards every week, but he didn't show up to New York last year with a bunch of rushing yards.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, we're talking about 300, 350. He could cruise by that in September, this year.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's talk about this defensive line, right? We have Jay Barker on our station every Tuesday and Thursday. The two of us get together for Crimson Tide Headlines, and he talks about that defense that he had to play against in '92, right? The one that won the national championship. And I think 10 of the 11 starters ended up in the NFL. One guy got hurt and didn't make it, but he felt like all of them should have made it into the NFL. Let's just focus on the defensive line. What did you think about this year's defensive line? And then how do you compare them with some of the other great D lines that Alabama's had?
Yeah, the strength to me is in the numbers. It's not one particular guy. I don't see, and I don't mean this as some sort of, maybe this is only a criticism in the Nick Saban era. I don't see a first round pick up there. I don't see a guy on Alabama's defensive line that reminds me of Quentin Williams or Marcel Darius. I don't think we have that guy. But what we have is several good players. And that's what I saw. I saw Justin Aboigbe's on the screen now. Justin Aboigbe played maybe his best game. It might not show up statistically, but I thought when Aboigbe was in playing his snaps, we were getting quality snaps out of him. We already knew Byron Young is pretty good. We saw the freshman Jaheim Otis play a lot of snaps with the first team and then finished out the game with the second team, played a ton of the second half. Jamil Burrows played with the first team. Tim Smith played with the first team. So you really got 6 guys that you have a lot of confidence in. And that's the strength of the defensive line. The fact that there's 6 that you trust. There's 6 that you know will do their job. Now, those that are disappointed that there's not a Quentin Williams in the bunch or a Marcel Darius in the bunch, I get that. And some of that's cyclical. Hey, maybe that guy's going to come along. Maybe that guy will be Otis in a year or two, Jaheim Otis that we see on the screen. Maybe he's a guy that's a first-round pick down the road. But overall, I love the depth of this group, and that when they're in there, any of the 6, you're getting a quality snap from that guy.
All right, Jimmy, final question. Do you think Texas is ready to compete with Alabama Saturday on the big stage?
Yes and no. I mean, I think Alabama's going to win the game by around 21 points, and that's the current line on the game as I understand it, around 19, 20, 21. I think Alabama is going to win by that score. That doesn't make the game sound – it's not a blowout. I mean, I'll be surprised if it's 49-3, 49-7. I think Texas will play with Alabama, and it won't get ugly. But Sark needs 1 or 2 more recruiting classes before he can put enough dudes out there to just line up and beat Alabama. I think for Texas to win on Saturday, they're going to have a lot of good fortune, and Alabama's going to have to make a lot of errors that they didn't make in this past game against Utah State. I just don't think Texas has quite enough dudes. Now, they got some dudes, and they will have their moments. Bijan Robinson, as good as any running back Alabama will play all year. Xavier Worthy is an outstanding wide receiver, for instance. Quinn Ewers is he's a talented kid, but they just don't have enough to hang with Alabama this time around. But, Saban turned Alabama around with just basically 2 recruiting classes. Let's give Sark maybe 1 more year and see what Texas looks like next season.
Yeah, we'll find out Saturday, 11 o'clock, when Alabama and Texas play for the first time in about 100 years in Austin. But the Crimson Tide have their longest winning streak over Texas in program history. 1 game. Jimmy, it's always awesome talking to you. What are you working on right now? How can people follow you and be a part of all the things that you are?
Come to the BamaInsider.com message board. I'm just telling you guys in terms of me answering questions, posting, what I think are interesting facts, jumping in, maybe some arguments about who's good, who's not good, talking about recruiting. I posted 1,100 times in August, and I'm going to beat that number in September. So come to the BamaInsider.com message board, the Talk of Champions, and let's talk Bama football all day long.
And you can join right now for $1. For $1, you get an entire year. You can hang out with Jimmy. Get on the message board. Challenge Jimmy if you want to. He loves that. So does Clint. They want you to get on there and cut it up. But the whole thing is, let's do it and have a good time doing it, right? Absolutely. That's what it's all about. It's about having a good time, cracking a smile, talking Alabama football. And you can do that at the Bama Insider message board. And Jimmy, he's the guy that regulates that thing on a daily basis. Thank you, Jimmy. Awesome hanging out. Let's do it again next Monday.
Thanks a lot, Mick. Can't wait. Roll Tide.
Hey, roll Tide to you, my friend. And that does it for us tonight, guys. Hey, let me remind you again, our show is brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. I mean, right next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. We watch the games from the Skygate Club, which is literally right next to Bryant-Denny. We can hear the roar of the crowd before we even see it on TV. That's the way we do it. They take care of us over there. They've got amazing units, 1 to 5 bedroom units that have amazing kitchens, that have a lot of room, 900 to 3,000 square feet. You've got the great parking in there and so much more. Whether you want to rent or buy, check it out at westgateal.com. David Kendall, thank you for the super chat. Should Jay Barker come back to Bama and be a coach? That question you can ask him tomorrow at 2:00 because we're going to have our show tomorrow, Crimson Tide headlines, Jay and I. And I'd love to pose that question to you. Also, Jersey Dolphins, man, thank you for the super chat from Saturday. Kind of slid by me in the mayhem of everything. But all of you guys that hit us with the super chats, man, we appreciate it so much. We love you guys and appreciate you being part of our channel. Like, subscribe. Give us a thumbs up, hit the bell, do all that stuff so that you're part of everything that we have going on with Alabama. Let's get to 500 likes plus for a show. All right, we've got the Saban press conference from earlier today that you can watch here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Anything that goes on with the Crimson Tide, we'll have that tomorrow. Jay Barker and I will be on at 2:00. And then Andrew Bone has his show tomorrow at 8:00. That's when we break down recruiting with Bone, the guru of recruiting. We've got a lot of other stuff going on, so make sure that you're a part of that, as Bama Insider and On3 are now together as one. And it's number one. Just like Alabama, football is on the field, so are we, and it's because of you guys. You guys are number one, and you've made us that way. All right, special thanks to our co-host tonight. Clint Lamb always brings it. Joseph Hastings with the latest on Alabama recruiting. We're dispatching him around the country to find out everything that's going on with these recruits. Jimmy Stein, I like talking football with Jimmy Stein because he's got more perspective than me. And I love that. So it's good. That was a lot of fun. Chris Daughtry behind the scenes getting the job done as always. Thumbs up to him. And for Kyle Henderson, who's the guy that puts this all together, I'm Mick Gillispie. Guys, thank you for hanging out with us. We'll talk to you again next Monday night. Until then, roll Tide.